It's common for people of my generation, millennials, the worst generation, can you tell them I'm biased, to say that boomers had it easier than us. And I need to know, in what fucking universe does anyone live in where they think for even a microsecond that boomers had it easier than millennials? Raise your hand if you were drafted. None of you are raising your hand because that's not a thing that people my age ever had to worry about. We all volunteered for war. They were forced into war. And then what happened when they came back from war? They were spit on, not taken serious, and casted aside to the dregs of society. Boomers didn't get to grow up in a time where mental illness was taken seriously. Men didn't get to cry because only queers cry, and you know what happens to queers, right? They also had to deal with polio, tuberculosis, and all kinds of other stuff that, thanks to vaccinations, we grew up in peace and harmony. Relative peace and harmony. Did you know women couldn't own their own bank account until 1960? For fuck's sake, the first state to make marital rape illegal was Nebraska in 1975. The last two states waited until 1993. In the 90s, it was still legal for a husband to force sex on his wife. That's not something women my age have to worry about. Do you like smoking weed where you can just walk down to the corner store and buy some? There are people right now in prison, boomers, who were smoking weed. Nowadays, it's cool and popular to explore your sexuality, but could you imagine 30 years ago? My generation doesn't have to worry about AIDS. Boomers died from AIDS. Oh, but they got to buy cheap houses. That's mostly due to the cities they lived in weren't popular and built up. They bought nice, great big houses for next to nothing in a small town where no one lived and there was nothing to do. You still could go buy a very cheap house, live in a 2-story house for less than $500 a month. All you have to do is move to bumfuck Egypt. While there won't be anything to do, unlike boomers, you'll have the fucking internet. When boomers were growing up, comedians like Lenny Bruce got arrested over obscenity charges. His joke was too offensive, so he got pulled off stage and arrested. Now that I think about it, this isn't a really good point because millennials, the scumbag generation, they support hate speech laws and they want comedians to be dragged off stage, beaten, and killed. So just skip that point. Yes, my generation has a harder time buying a house, but their generation had a harder time just existing. This is the greatest time in all of human history to be alive, and all my generation does is complain. Technically, I'm complaining right now, but I'm a millennial, so it's allowed.